Okay, so Bob, I want to start with you because all of this started with you. Is it true that the initial inspiration came from a trip back to your childhood home?
It's true. I happened to be digging around in the basement and I found my dad's high school yearbook. I had attended the same high school my dad did, so I found it. I'd never seen it before. I'm thinking, oh, it'd be cool to see what my high school looked like in 1940. And I discovered that my dad had been the president of his graduating class. And I'm looking at this picture of my dad, looking very prim and proper and straight, and thinking about the president of my graduating class, who was a complete fucking asshole. I thought to myself, if I had gone to high school with my dad, would I have even been friends with him? And that is when the bolt of lightning struck, and I said, that's a movie.
And you had been friends with Robert Zemeckis since college, and you worked really hard on this screenplay. I mean, this screenplay has been called one of the most tightly constructed screenplays in film history. I know producer Steven Spielberg likened it to Billy Wilder's scripts, one of his scripts, because of the fact that it is so tightly done. All the time travel makes sense, follows the rules. How long did it take you to write that script? And then it wasn't an easy yes for studios, was it?
We started writing the script in fall of 1980. We had a first draft. This was for Columbia Pictures. We had a first draft in February of 1981. We spent 6 more weeks for a second draft. They rejected it. They gave it back to us to try to set up someplace else. We took it all over town. Rejection, rejection, rejection. Time travel movies don't make any money. True statement in the early 80s. Time travel movies didn't make any money. It's very nice, it's very sweet, and we're looking for raunchier comedies. Why don't you guys take this to Disney? So finally, out of exasperation, we took it to Disney. This was the old Disney. And the executive we met with said, are you guys out of your mind? Do you think Disney's gonna make a movie about incest? Finally, Bob Zemeckis made a movie called Romancing the Stone, which was a big hit, and everybody and his uncle wanted to be in business with Bob Zemeckis. And the movie that Bob wanted to make more than anything was Back to the Future. And our friend Steven Spielberg had always liked the script, so we thought, let's go to a real friend instead of one of these new fair weather friends that Bob has. Steven had just set up Amblin Entertainment, and Back to the Future was, in 1984, the very first Amblin Entertainment movie.
And Romancing the Stone brings us to you, Dean, because you worked with Bob Zemeckis on Romancing the Stone, and then you came on board for Back to the Future. I mean, he is still a director that is constantly using technology to innovate, but also to tell a story. And for you as a cinematographer, on this film in particular, did you do things that you never had done before, or did you feel like you were able to play in a new toolbox?
Well, I think that one of the things that's always intrigued me about cinematography and filmmaking is always taking the audience where they haven't been before, or at least doing it in a way that they haven't seen or figured out before. So Back to the Future was an example of that. The story, the characters, everything was perfect, intriguing, but the presentation was the thing that intrigued me also. And it was one of the best scripts I had ever read, and it's still considered like that. Thank you, Bob. So I really appreciated the opportunity to tell an intriguing story in a way that hadn't necessarily been done before.
And at the same time, you have to have sort of nostalgic, almost fantasy feel of the 50s, even though you have the futuristic idea of time travel. Did you look to any particular films, do you remember, for inspiration on how the 50s might look different visually to the 80s? Because to me, it just feels so warm and inviting.
Well, I grew up in the 50s. So I had actually a really good childhood, so my vision of the 50s was warm and inviting and fun. So I think I drew a lot on my memories, my sensibilities about the period. You look at movies made then, there were certain sensibilities in the characters and so forth, but I think I had personal experiences that really sort of made me want to create a 50s that was nostalgic, it was warm. We used little slightly different colors, techniques and so forth that to make the 50s contrast with the 80s.
Yeah, to make it warm, but also a lot of night shoots. And I know that once Michael J. Fox came on board, he was doing double duty. He was making Family Ties in the morning and then rushing over and doing Back to the Future at night. But Charlie, I mean, Michael coming on board and replacing Eric ended up being very fortuitous to you. Can you tell us about the time that you met Michael J. Fox and how you came to be hired on this film?
Yeah, so I started doing stunts in New York, and I came out to L.A. In 1984.
Might have to hold it a little higher.
And someone had suggested to me that if I ever run into this particular stunt coordinator, I should meet him. So you used to sneak on the lot. Hopefully you didn't get thrown off, which we did quite often. You would get your hands on the call sheets of the day, and you would go and visit all of the stunt coordinators. Well, on this particular day, 30 days after arriving, I went into the room at Universal where the call sheets were, and there was one call sheet sitting on the desk, and that guy's name was on it. And I went, well, that's that guy. I better go meet him. Where is this? And the girl in the office said, oh, they're on the back lot shooting today. So I found out where the back lot was. I had never been there before. I headed out to the back lot, got to the set in Town Square, and David McGiffert, the first AD, who is actually here in the audience tonight, I ran into him. He's an amazing guy. Ran into him, asked him where that guy was. Max Clevin was his name. And he pointed him out, and so I headed towards Max Clevin. And as I was walking up to Max, Mike walked up alongside me, and we walked right up to Max together. And Mike asked Max, he said, is this my stunt double? And Max looked at me, and he looked at Mike, and we're exactly the same size, kind of moved the same way. He went, yeah. So then we said, nice to meet you, Mike. Mike went about his way, and Max leaned at me, he goes, you do stunts, right? I said, yes, sir, I do. And that's how I started with Mike, and we've been friends for 40 years, and to have been included tonight in this event with these two gentlemen is just phenomenal. I mean, like I've died and gone to heaven. And this has got to be a dream that I don't want to wake up from. The last 40 years have been just phenomenal. And all thanks to these guys.
Well, let's not discount how hard you worked on this film.
It was...
What was it like to work so closely with Michael J. Fox? As you said, you became friends. And what was it like on this initial set?
Yeah, so, there are times that you meet somebody and you're instantly, friends. And there's nothing difficult about it. Nothing is forced. It was funny because I just was talking to Mike the other day, and he said, it was interesting when we first met, I knew that you were a driven guy, just like I was, and that I admired about you, and that I admired about Mike because he was just so dedicated. I mean, working 2 shows at the same time. And so everything that we did together was just easy. And, if there was a really dangerous stunt, I usually had to try to stop him from doing it because he's an incredible athlete. But it's always just been, I can go for a year without seeing him. And when we see each other again and we talk again, it's like, I just saw him this morning. So, just fantastic. And the cast and the crew, all of them all of the Back to the Futures and other subsequent movies, it's all like a giant family still. Everybody's still friends, which is just phenomenal for me. And when I say I feel like I'm dreaming and I don't want to wake up, it really does feel that way.
Well, Dean, we were talking about backstage just how light the set was. I mean, you're professional in getting your work done, but it sounds like you also had time for fun. And when you look at this guy's credits on IMDb, I mean, Dean, you've worked with John Carpenter on films like Halloween, The Thing, Escape from New York. I mean, you worked with Bob Zemeckis also, Romancing the Stone, also Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Death Becomes Her. Then you worked with Spielberg on Hook and Jurassic Park. I mean, where does Back to the Future rank for you in terms of the experience you had on set?
Well, I have to be honest about this and say it's potentially my favorite project ever. It was, no, thank you, it deserves that. It was a really pleasant situation, more than pleasant. It was a great script. The performances, Michael was so committed that he did 2 jobs. I had a great crew. Working with Bob Z was a very collaborative kind of thing. And so I think the success, the fact that here we are, 40 years later, and everybody's still interested in it. I have read a couple reviews recently that say the film is, one of the best constructed, best executed in, certainly recent history. And so for me, it's always been one of the most enjoyable life experiences ever.
And Bob, I'm sure you could never have imagined you'd still be talking about this film when you were making it. This is a little cheesy question, but just go with me here. If you could time travel back to a moment on that set and somehow talk to yourself without ruining the space-time continuum, what would you say to yourself?
Well, I often think about actually time traveling back to 1981 when Bob and I were struggling to try to figure out how the script was going to all work out and how we were going to solve some of these problems. And walking into the office and saying, hey, do you guys know what's going to be going on in 2025? They're going to have the IMAX version of this. There's going to be a Back to the Future Broadway musical. Universal's going to be doing this whole big thing about Back to the Future. And I know that young Bob Zemeckis and young Bob Gale would look at this old guy sitting in front of you and saying, old man, what the hell have you been drinking?
Still no hover cars, though. I'm waiting for the hover cars. But
So
please join me in thanking Bob Gale, Dean Cundy, Charlie Crowell.